Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, and for those listening at home, welcome to our first OCM for 2025. Please be seated while our blessing is delivered by Councillor Peter Abetz. Thank you.
Almighty God and Father, as we've gathered for this council meeting, we first want to thank you for the many and abundant blessings that you've bestowed upon us and our city. We thank you for the ability to be involved in the high calling of governing our city. We pray for our Mayor as she chairs this meeting and for the directors as they provide us with advice. Graciously grant us wisdom to rightly weigh the issues where there are conflicting interests, discernment to understand the true needs of our city and its people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, and the ability to work together in harmony and respectfully, even when we see things differently. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. Okay, before we begin, I will acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging. Now I declare the meeting open at 7:01. Members of the public are cautioned against taking any action on council items in which they may have an interest until such time as they've seen a copy of the minutes of the meeting or have been advised in writing by city staff. Announcement of visitors, there are none. Please note all council meetings are digitally recorded and live streamed on the city's YouTube channel, except for confidential agenda items, during which time the live stream will be temporarily suspended. Disclaimer, yes, that's been read, thank you. I'm getting back into the swing of things in 2025, so. Our record of attendance, we're all here. Councillor Adams is joining us online, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest tonight, councillors? No disclosures of interest, thank you. Announcements by presiding member. Well, firstly, welcome back, councillors, to the first meeting for 2025, as I've already said. Hope you're all ready and raring to go for a great year. Yeah, I can see that, you're all positive, ready to go. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for our first official OCM for tonight as well. A couple of things to announce, a couple not so good, not good at all, actually. Mr. Gil McDonald passed away in January, and Mr. McDonald was a long advocate for heritage in the area, as well as he was one of the writers of the book The Gosnells Story, which was based on the Gosnells history from 1829 to 1987. So he was very much a contributor to the record keeping of this city. So we pass on our condolences to his family and friends, and he'll be missed, and a world of knowledge missed as well. So yes. The second one I've got is the passing of Linda Billington. Linda is one of the founding members of Rock and the Pink, and as you might have met her at our Auspire Citizenship Awards just a few weeks ago, she passed away just a couple of days ago, so extend our sympathies to her family and friends, and she was a great contributor in fundraising for breast cancer and spreading the word for that amongst the city, so she was a very lovely lady, so condolences to her family and friends, of course. On a positive note, congratulations to the Gosnells Chinese Association for putting on a wonderful community event for their first Chinese New Year event on the weekend, which of course our councillor Emma Zhang is part of that group, so fantastic to see that a community group has taken on that role of providing that service to the whole community. It was great to see. I wasn't able to make it, but I saw the pictures and it was great. A lot of the councillors were there, so thank you for attending, and it was really great to see so many people coming together for that event. And I think that is it for me, but let's look forward to a great year. But that's the end of my announcement. So we'll move on to the reports of delegates. Are there any? No? Announcement of, okay, we're going to move right on to question time then. What have we got? A couple of questions here. So question time is, first up we have Daniel Stevens. Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got one question tonight. How is the council combating the problem of dumping shopping trolleys in the city? And can the city advise stores how to use technology to stop the trolleys going into public spaces?
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, and I'll ask Director Brad Brooke to respond to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've run various awareness campaigns about reporting shopping trolleys to the major retailers via their shopping trolley apps. the retailers are fairly efficient at coming to pick up their trolleys once they've been reported. The problem is they don't get reported often enough or quickly enough. But just recently I was, there's a local government which is looking to make changes to their local law that requires retailers to implement technology to keep shopping trolleys within their property boundaries. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on to see if they're able to get those through Parliament and whether we might be able to do something similar.
Thank you, Mr Bradbrook. Moving on, have Leah Sislak for a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask, why is the annual electors meeting not available to live stream or rewatch from home, specifically the general business of public statement time and question time?
Thank you, and Director Bradbrook will respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've actually just made some technology changes to the function room there that would actually allow us to do live streaming of those meetings. There's some privacy issues that we need to deal with before we did that, but it's something that we could look at for future electors' meetings.
Thank you. And I know she's got 5 questions. You can ask them all because we don't have too many tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. How has the Armidale Line train works impacted the construction of the Wilpon Street Park in Beckenham?
And Mr CEO will respond to that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, it hasn't. We're still planning to do the works when the weather cools off.
Thank you. Next question.
Does the city install CCTV in areas that frequently have hazardous waste dumped on council property, such as tyres, paint tins, etc.?
Thank you. And Director Bradbrook will respond to that question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have been trialling CCTV cameras in some dumping hotspots, and we have got some good footage of people and their vehicles with their registration details, and they will lead to some prosecutions. There has been some challenges in getting the owner details of a vehicle that is no longer registered. We're battling with a few state government agencies to make sure that we can get that information to be able to prosecute those offenders. But yes, we're certainly looking at putting CCTV in hotspots to catch people where we can.
Thank you. Next question.
Would the city consider installing CCTV on Teal Street in Beckenham, as it has become a regular spot for vehicles to come and dump waste tyres and paint tins on council verge in front of residents' houses? However, the residents have been unable to get registration plates for the police.
Yes, the city could consider that. Thank you.
And then last one, if a development application has an objection, would it be delegated to the staff or the council for the decision?
Mr Terrelink will respond to that. I believe it would be.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If it's on an objection on planning grounds, it would come to the council.
Thank you, Mr Terrelink.
Thank you. Mr Walker, you've got 4 questions here, and I note this. Come forward, please. Sorry, Mr Walker's next. And I note that a lot of these questions are aligned with some questions that you were asking last year, and I would remind you that it's been a council decision that has passed, so I will give you these questions now, but it'd be wise to just accept that it's a council decision on this item and it's been passed.
That's unclear to me, Madam Mayor.
That's unclear to you, is you seem to be continuing to ask questions about Carrican and the maintenance of the site, as well as the insurance state on it and as well as the leasee, and you have asked these questions on a number of occasions before, so I'm not sure why
Madam Mayor,
you're asking the same questions
again. That is incorrect, Madam Mayor.
I'll let you ask the questions tonight, but I'll just let you know that you have asked a number of these questions previously and they have been responded to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it accurate that the buildings at Carrican are insured by the city?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Does the insurance policy for the buildings at Carrican require the buildings to be maintained in a good state of repair?
Yes, they do.
Given that the independent report of Home Integrity Building Consultants states that buildings at Carrican require an estimated $3.2 million of repairs, is the city exposed to the risk of having any insurance claim for buildings at Carrican rejected by the insurer?
I'll get Mr Bradbrook to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in terms of the insurance policy, the insurance for wear and tear on a building would be excluded from an insurance claim in any event. So we're not planning to make an insurance claim on those buildings because they have deteriorated simply with age. So we don't intend to make a claim. So I don't think there is a risk of a claim being rejected.
Thank you. Your next question?
Under the terms of the lease, is Wildlife Australia Inc. as lessee responsible for maintenance of the buildings at Carrican?
Thank you. I'll get the Acting Director for Infrastructure to respond to that question. Miss... Sorry, Edmondson. Her surname escaped me then. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I can confirm that the maintenance under the current lease is the responsibility of Wildlife Australia.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Walker.
Mayor.
Are there any more questions? No public statements? Okay, that brings us to the end of public question and public statement time. Now move on to the confirmation of the minutes. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Islam to move that and a seconder. Councillor Zhang. Councillors, if you could please raise... Sorry, I should ask, did you have any questions on the minutes, councillors? No? If you could please vote on that item, please, by raise of hands. Thank you. That has been carried. Receiving of petitions and presentations. Are there any? No? Thank you. Are there any applications for leave of absence? Nope. There are no questions of which due notice has been given, no items to bring forward. We'll move on to item 13.1.1, which is a public open space strategy update. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Baines to move that and a seconder. Councillor Dewhurst to second it. Councillor Baines, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Dewhurst? I would actually have a procedural motion to defer this item and for the... to be deferred for further consideration and discussion at a workshop for the following reasons. There are some fundamental issues associated with the strategy that require further consideration and discussion, including continuing to collect cash in lieu in provision of public open space in infill areas, particularly given that the strategy concludes that the city has adequate public open space and the impact these contributions have on housing affordability, using cash in lieu to funds to acquire land for public open space in areas that the Kenwick and Maddington train stations surround in order to contain costs associated with redeveloping these areas, discussion on the use of the cash in lieu funds to install floodlighting and new reticulation at existing parks. And I also note that Councillor Williamson has a couple of amendments here, so I'll include them in my topics for discussion at the workshop. And that is, one is to the inclusion of additional appendix to the POS strategy, which details public open space identified for disposal, with that information also being made available on the city website, and the list of public open space identified for disposal being reviewed and updated annually, and also that the Chief Executive Officer be requested to list for further consideration at a workshop the use of funds collected as cash in lieu for public open space for acquisition of land versus the use of those funds for the development and improvement of existing parks. Can I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Williamson's happy to second that. I don't think I need to say anything more than what I've said, other than we've got more discussion to make on these strategies, so I would like to ask for council's support in deferring that so we can talk about that in a workshop further. So, councillors, if you please cast your vote on this deferral. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. Okay, move on to item 13.1.2, the implications of withdrawing the city's consent for the drive-in cinema. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Dewhurst to move this and a seconder. Councillor Adams to second that. Councillor Dewhurst, would you like to speak to this item? No. Councillor Adams? Or anybody else like to speak to this item, councillors? No? Okay, thank you. If you could please cast your vote. Thank you. That has been carried. Moving on to the 13.1.2, the Major Projects Progress Report. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Zhang to move that and Councillor Betts to second that. Councillor Zhang, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Betts? Councillor Singh, did you have your hand up? Are you ready to vote? Okay, councillors, if there's no questions or debate on this item, if I could get you to please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. Moving on, 13.1.4, superannuation for elected members. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Good to move this and a seconder. Councillor Singh to second this. Councillor Good, would you like to speak to this item? No. Thank you. Councillor Singh, would you like to speak to this item? Would anybody else like to speak to this item? No, thank you. Councillors, if you please cast your vote. Thank you, that has been carried. 13.2.1, the development application for the temporary storage fill at Victoria Road in Kenwick. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Dewhurst to move this, Councillor Islam to second this. Councillor Dewhurst, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Islam. Would anybody else like to speak to this item? Councillor Betts, thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, I think just for the benefit of people in the public gallery and also those listening online, by allowing this, it'll actually, as the report tells us, it will save some 3,500 semi-trailer movements on streets in the Kenwick area, and plus the saving in fossil fuel, etc. So I think this is a no-brainer to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. Would anybody else like to speak further on that? Okay, councillors, would you please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. Moving on to item number 13.2.2, the development application for the warehouse self-storage units at 8, lot 92, Ferris Drive in Martin. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Dalton to move this, and a seconder. Councillor Lloyd to second this, sorry. Councillor Dalton, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Lloyd? No, I have an amendment for this item, councillors. It reads as, I, Mayor Lyons, propose the following, that the staff recommendation be amended by the inclusion of the following additional parts. That condition 5 of the recommendation be amended by adding the following words to the landscaping condition. That the landscaping plan is to be amended to include a selection of advanced tree species which provide additional foraging habitat for black cockatoos. And for the following reason is that the proposed landscaping installation gives an opportunity to introduce additional food sources for our black cockatoos. So can I get a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Betts. Just to follow up and just speak to that briefly, in that I think that if we have got an expectation from the community to do more to protect and provide food sources for the black cockatoos. So when we are approving landscapes, I think it's best practice is to actually put in foraging habitat for black cockatoos. If we're going to be doing that within our own area and we have an opportunity to do that in our industrial and commercial spaces, then we should definitely take advantage of that. So thank you, councillors. I ask you to support the amendment. Councillor Dewhurst, would you like to speak to the item? Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd like to applaud you, and I hope the other councillors take that. Applaud you, I said. Yeah.
I don't know what you said to start with. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Actually, the cockatoos are in such a bad way, and I learned over the weekend that I know previously I spoke about that for the very first time we've got cockatoos on the ground getting picked up that are just skin and bone and they're hungry, and they just literally can't fly, and some of them can't even walk, and we've got probably close to 80 of them up at the Cockatoo Centre at the moment. But what we are finding now actually is over the last few weeks being hot, fledglings, so young cockatoos who shouldn't be out their nests yet are actually jumping out of the nests onto the ground who can't fly. And the reason they're doing that is too hot in the nest for them. So, but what's happened, we've only got about 20 up the centre at the moment. And but what's happening is how many hundreds others that have hit the ground that haven't survived because of cats, dogs, or people picking them up and taking them home and think they make a great pet. So this is actually a big generational change at the moment, because we're hearing this right across the southwest of Western Australia where this is occurring. So yeah, they're in dire needs, and so I'd like to applaud you that if we can change our thoughts behind any on any greening of our developments and private developments to put in cockatoo foraging would be most beneficial. But bearing in mind, I might sound quite arrogant or ignorant, the fact is I'm just talking about cockatoos, but you feed a cockatoo and they'll feed everybody else, because cockatoos, as you know, are very messy, and they'll drop their food and the parrots will come in and eat after them, and then if you've got lucky enough to have woolies or other critters running around, they'll eat off the ground from there. So yeah, if you feed the cockatoos, you'll feed everybody else. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Would anybody else like to speak to this item? Or speak to the amendment, I should say. Okay, councillors, could I ask you to vote on the amendment? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That has been carried. And now we put the amendment back with the original item. Would anybody like to speak to the original item? So we'll vote on that together with the amendment. Thank you, councillors. Please cast your vote. Thank you. That has been carried. Now move on to item number 13.2.3, which is the development application for the warehouse self-storage units at 492, lot 91, Southern River Road, Southern River. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Islam to move this, Councillor Dewhurst to second this. Councillor Islam, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Dewhurst. Once again, I have an amendment for this item as well, which is it's exactly the same as the last one, but I'll just, councillors, do you need me to read that again? It's to change it so that there is more black cockatoo foraging habitat. Can I get a seconder for that amendment. Councillor Betts, happy to second it, and for the reasons I just explained. Would anybody like to speak to the amendment? No? Councillors, if you could please cast your vote on the amendment. Thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. And we'll now put that amendment back with the original item. And would anybody like to speak with the original item? Other than to say, welcome to, that's a massive big development out there in Southern River. It's going to be a huge storage, which is obviously well sought after out there. So it's good to see that area starting to develop. And I know our own area just down the road. Director Terrell-Link and I had a meeting with one of the developers out there, and our lots have all been sold, and so have his. So it's actually going to go ahead pretty quickly with. I think they estimate $200 million worth of investment out there. Would that be? Is that right? Sorry, I think I got that right. Yeah, $200 million worth of investment out in Southern River. So that's great to see that happening. Anybody else like to speak to this item? No? Okay, Councillor, if you could please cast your vote on the original item with the amendment. Thank you. That has been carried. Okay, moving on to 13.2.4, the report on the petition, the request to deny the application for the development approval of a drive-in cinema at Harmony Fields in Maddington. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Islam to move this and a seconder. Councillor Baines to second it. Councillor Islam, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Baines, would anybody else like to speak to this item? Councillor Dewhurst, thank you.
Could perhaps for interest sakes just actually speak about the process in regards to the report and about the decision makers and all that sort of stuff, so we can make it clear.
Oh, sorry, that's a question for...
Yeah, for maybe...
Mr Terrell-Link?
Mr Terrell-Link,
yes.
yeah.
You clear with that question, Mr Terrell-Link? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Where we're at the moment is we have a set of plans that raise a whole heap of questions, and some of those questions are very similar to issues raised in the petitions. There's been time allowed for the proponents to address those concerns, and the proponents have requested from the DAP an extension of time to prepare their responses to those issues, and the response to the issues is due by the 15th of March of this year. After that time, presuming the issues are addressed, the city would then finalise a technical report that provides assistance to the DAP in making a final decision.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this item or ask questions? No? Councillors, if you please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. Moving on to 13.3.1, the proposed licence for car parking bays at the Crescent, Maddington to Public Transport Authority of Western Australia. Councillor Dewhurst, happy to move that. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Serena Williams to second that. Would you like to speak to this? Thank you.
This is absolutely wonderful, because one of the biggest complaints around that train station from people who go there, you can't find parking. Yeah, I'd give up parking there, but all these are going to add some extra parking. So, yeah, absolutely wonderful. So.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Anyone else like to speak to this item? No? Councillors, will you please cast your vote? Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. Moving on to item 13.3.2, the proposed lease for part of Mills Park Reserve to the City Football Group Australia Operations Proprietary Limited. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Lloyd to move this and Councillor Adams to second this. Councillor Lloyd, would you like to speak to this item? Councillor Adams, would anybody else like to speak to this item? Councillor Baines, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have an amendment proposed for this one. So I, Karen Baines, propose the following: that the staff recommendation be amended by the inclusion of an additional lease term requiring the sea container to be clad to the city's satisfaction. I'll continue. For the following reason, is to ensure the appearance of the sea container is appropriate to the beautiful environment at Mills Park.
Thank you. Seeking a seconder for that? Councillor Dalton is seconding that for you. Would you like to speak further to that item, Councillor Baines? No, thank you. Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to that item? Councillor Lloyd, thank you.
Just quickly, I just wanted to mention that we've said the word clad, but could that, as I mentioned earlier, also be a mural or some kind of other beautification? Thank you.
Did you want to amend the amendment? No. I'm sure internally do that. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this item? No? Yep. Yep, okay. Thank you. Can we please cast our votes on that? Thank you. That has been carried. That is the amendment. Now we'll put that back with the original item. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I may have just gone ahead onto the next item. We're now going to put that amendment back with the original item. Would anybody like to speak to the original item? No? Thank you. If you could please cast your vote with the item plus the amendment. Thank you. That has been carried. Thank you. Item 13.5.1, the payment of accounts for December 2024. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Islam to move this. Councillor McDonald to second this. Thank you. Councillor Islam, would you like to speak to this item? No. Councillor McDonald? No. Would anybody else like to speak to this item? No. Thank you, councillors. Would you please cast your vote? Thank you. That has been carried. Item 13.5.2, the financial activity statement for December 2024. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor McDonald to move this and Councillor Lloyd to second this. Thank you. Would you like to speak to this item, Councillor Lloyd? Any questions or debate on this item, councillors? No, if you please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. 13.5.3, the budget variation for 24-25 capital works program. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Dalton to move this. Deputy Mayor Councillor Serena Williamson to second this. Councillor Dalton, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Williamson? No. Councillor Dewhurst, thank you.
I'm happy to take the answer on notice. I've put you in the spot. Has anything occurred or any more planning gone into the roundabout for Mills Road East and Canning Road on top of the hill there?
Mr. CEO, thank you.
Madam Mayor, we've raised that in terms of potential and issues that election candidates could pick up. We are still hopeful that we might be able to get some outside grant funding for it. So there's been nothing from the city at the moment, but we'd need to make a decision next year if it's not picked up as an election commitment or there's no clear grant funding.
You mean next financial year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up question, Mr.?
So it's been in the seat of Thornley. I'm sure Councillor and candidate Kevin McDonald would be able to actually write a letter for us in regards to support of that, I suppose.
Would anybody else like to speak on this item? Right, councillors, if you please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. There are no motions of which previous notice has been given. There is no urgent business, no confidential items. I declare the meeting closed at 7:29. Thank you very much, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, thank you. Have a safe trip home. Thank you to everyone listening at home. Thank you. Bye, Aaron.